Good day to you. Welcome to Rockland Talk Radio. I'm John Marino. This is the Cup of Joe political show, and we are produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by a variety of people up and down the Hudson Valley. For example, Robeson Oil, the house that Service built. By Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction. They're in Armonk in Westchester. Hightower, Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard. They both work up and down the Hudson Valley. And also by Jaguar Land Rover, located throughout the Hudson Valley, including in Mount Kisco, New Rochelle, and in White Plains. We are joined here on Rockland Talk Radio by Clarkstown Supervisor George Hoehmann. George Hoehmann, welcome back to Rockland Talk Radio. It's been, we talked before we went on the air about how long Rockland Talk Radio has been around. It's been around about as long as the pandemic has been. And I know Clarkstown has done a great job recovering. Walk us through what's going on in Clarkstown right now. How have you recovered? How have you been successful? And what's going on economically?
Well, John, thanks so much for having me back on. And you're right. I think we're on early last year, maybe last spring. And I can tell you, Clarkstown's doing well with the recovery from the pandemic. And I think the key to our success has been that we've had a good number of new ratables coming in, and we've really tried to modify what we did to try and help the local businesses. And let me tell you how we did that. Very quickly, we brought on an economic development staff person. In fact, we did that early on in the pandemic, and it was incredibly helpful because there was an extra staff person within town hall. We had the position. I had long envisioned it, but we realized with the pandemic coming on that we really needed to have a more targeted and focused approach to bringing businesses in and helping the businesses that are here when they interact with government. And so we did a number of different things. Like a lot of the other places, we were the first over here in Rockland, but a lot of the other towns in the Hudson Valley, when the pandemic hit, tried to do things like relaxing outdoor dining rules with the local zoning. And we've done that consistently through the pandemic. In fact, we're looking at some tweaks with our zoning code, which is going to make it easier for it to be more permanent, but it still continues here in Clarkstown. So we allowed for a lot of sidewalk dining. We allowed for the creation of outdoor enclosure areas for our restaurants. And that was really a godsend to the local restaurants. And our economic development staff person, Jeff Gillies, who we brought in, he really worked hand in glove with the restaurants. The other thing that we did, not just for the restaurants, but for our businesses, we worked very closely with the small business administration. We did a great job in terms of actually broadcasting over on our YouTube channel, on Facebook, recording it, putting it out on our public access channel, the number of webinars on how to get funding, how to be able to get the COVID relief funding for businesses. And it's no surprise that when you look at the funding in Rockland County, the businesses in Clarkstown, including the restaurants just across the board, about 75 to 80% of the COVID funding in Rockland County went to Clarkstown businesses. And I believe, and I've been told this by the people from the Small Business Administration, we really made it easy. We put a lot of information out. We worked with them. And a lot of businesses were able to tap into the COVID relief funding. And our economic development staff person, Jeff Gillies, became an additional resource to a lot of the businesses. We promoted it to people. So in a very practical sense, we met the businesses and the restaurants where they were, not just the restaurants, but businesses in general. And I'm very proud to say that that helped a lot of businesses here in Clarkstown. Fewer restaurants closed here than in other parts of the county. In fact, some of the restaurants did quite well in retrospect. And the other thing that we did, a third approach, particularly targeted to the restaurants, but also small businesses to try and get people to shop local. We did a thing called Meet Me on Main, and we did it twofold. So Meet Me on Main, we actually did a thing called Meet Me on Main where we would close down a portion of Main Street, and we would invite the businesses to have sidewalk sales. We'd have the restaurants come out into the street and serve in the street. And we did this during COVID, and we've continued it. And that became extraordinarily successful across the town. The people came to like it, wanted to participate in it. Restaurants were very successful. It allowed for great social distancing. So we would close different parts of Main Street in New City. We'd close different parts of the downtown areas in Congress, Valley Cottage, New City, the Nanuet as well. And it really became a staple, particularly throughout the pandemic. And it enabled people to feel comfortable coming out where they could go, like on a Saturday or Sunday when we did it. We would do it once a month or so, during the warmer months and all the way through the fall, and became extremely successful for a number of the restaurants. In fact, some of the restaurants told us, the Nanuet restaurant, Ambulance Brewhouse in Nanuet, when we did it in Nanuet, they said it was the best day they ever had, in all the years of being open. Similarly, here we had several restaurants in New City tell us the same thing. And so we're doing that on a more limited basis, but we're still continuing to do it. And then the last piece of that Meet Me on Main was also a public access TV show that I do that we also put out via our social media. We got about 16,000 people on our e-news list. And it's actually like a Food Network type show where I host. We call it Meet Me on Main, and I go out to 3 different restaurants, interview the owners and the chefs. We sample some of the foods, talk to some of the patrons, and Joe Beckerly from Beckerly Productions actually puts it together for us. And we've done a bunch of those. I think we did 6 last year. We're on pace to do 6 this year. They're up on the Town of Clarkstown YouTube channel. They get great following. We've got thousands of views on some of these shows on our YouTube channel, and they play on a rotation on the Town of Clarkstown Public Access channel as well. And we break them into individual segments. So it's like a half-hour show. So each segment on each restaurant goes, roughly 9 minutes, with some transitions in between. And we even put in some town commercials on the public access channel, some informational commercials about the town. And you'd be surprised at how well received those things have been, and how happy the restaurants have been. I think we've done. We're up north of like 15 or 16 shows since the start of the pandemic, and each show focuses on 3 restaurants. So you can imagine it's getting a lot of information out about restaurants around the town. So that's kind of been our approach.
I guess then, right? You've become a pretty good food connoisseur, maybe a pretty good cook too along the way.
Well, we'll see. I will tell you, I've picked up a number of dishes from some of these restaurants, and it's been interesting going in behind the scenes in the local restaurants. And the show, if I don't say so myself, it's been quite entertaining. We had a lot of people talk to me about it. In fact, I've been recognized by some people more on Facebook, not as much as the supervisor, but as, hey, you're the guy with the restaurant program, which was kind of neat. But that's been one of the things we've actually been doing here in the town. In fact, I will tell you, we have a public access channel, channel 35 on Verizon, and channel 78 for Cablevision. And I've done a number of talk shows, and one of our production company, Joe Beckerly, Beckerly Productions, suggested, he said, some of these programs are quite good. You might consider submitting them, to be, considered for a New York Emmy. And I kind of chuckled and laughed at it. But sure enough, he submitted 3 of the different shows, Hometown Happenings, Meet Me on Main. And I do another program called Faith Matters that we started also at the beginning of the pandemic, where we brought in 3 different religious leaders from different houses of worship to talk about topics of interest to the general community. So I have Rabbi Kurlan from Temple Shir Shalom, which had been an Nanuet Hebrew Center, Reverend Richard Hasselback from the Clarkstown Reformed Church, and Mohammed Ziaullah from the Islamic Center of Rockland County. So anyway, long story short, you're the first media person I'm telling this. We on last Thursday, our Faith Matters program actually was nominated for a New York Emmy. We received the nomination.
Congratulations on that.
So thanks so much. So it's actually one of 2 in that category, the religion category, and we'll all be attending the gala in October.
Now, throughout the pandemic, obviously, I think the 7 counties of the lower and mid Hudson Valley, and it's pretty well known, did a great job of working together to try to bounce back from COVID and limit the damage as best as possible. Did the counties and localities get into kind of a competition in order to do this, to bring people to move to the Hudson Valley, to bring businesses to the Hudson Valley?
So let me start off by saying that in Rockland County, the 5 town supervisors work extremely well together. There's 5 towns, so it's unlike Westchester. You have a lot more towns. I think towns and villages. You're probably 39 or 40, I think was the number I had heard at one point. So in Rockland, they've got 5 towns and about 13 villages now. So the 5 town supervisors really work well together. And that was extraordinarily helpful during the pandemic. We worked in a very collaborative nature throughout the pandemic. We were having once, twice, 3 times a day conference calls, particularly in the early days of the pandemic. There wasn't a lot of information that was coming out from the state. There were things that were conflicting. The county was a little behind where the towns were. And so all of us kind of working together, it kind of helped. Now, in terms of the bringing businesses in, I will tell you, we do have a little bit of a healthy competition. Like I had a friendly bet with Teresa Kenny, the Orangetown supervisor, about Chick-fil-A. And I said we were going to beat her to the punch of getting a Chick-fil-A in. And we both joked about it, but we actually have a Chick-fil-A coming before the planning board in Nanuet, and it'll be the first Chick-fil-A in Rockland County. We're all anxiously trying to get Trader Joe's in. And, we're obviously working with some of the clusters of companies that are here to see their affiliated industries, to see about maybe them co-locating here or developing here and those companies expanding. So I would say there is a little bit of a healthy competition, but honestly, in Clarkstown, we're fortunate. We have over 60% of the commercial ratables of all of Rockland County in our town. And so, we have kind of become the economic hub here. The concern, though, is that with the changing face of how business operates, with a lot more people working at home, and business is not really going back to traditional 5-day work weeks in the office. It is, I think, going to change how we view things here. And that's how one of the things we're looking at is some tweaks in our zoning to allow for more shared offices and things of that nature, just based upon the realities that COVID presented. COVID forever changed, I think, how businesses will operate, at least in the near short term, maybe forever. And so certainly we're going to try and be as flexible as we possibly can to make sure that our community remains vibrant and viable. But like I said, we have clusters here. So we have several businesses. We have Intercos, of Aptar, a major pharmaceutical, Intercos, which is an Italian cosmetic manufacturing company. These are companies that employ thousands of people, within the New York area, right here in Clarkstown. Nice Pack, as well. And so we're working closely with them, and a lot of these places are expanding. The other area that we're seeing some real growth is obviously in the medical field. Nyack Hospital, we work closely with Montefiore Nyack. They're building a new 80,000 square foot orthopedic med surge and rehab facility in West Nyack. We fast tracked them through the zoning process. They were able to get approval in just over 4 months, which is unheard of, through the planning board process. But it's one of the commitments we have to trying to be as competitive as possible, because time is money to businesses. And so expansions and developments, we're not trying to willy-nilly do things, but if people have things in order, we'll get them through the process a lot more quickly. And we attribute a lot of that to the economic development focus that my administration's put forward, and also having a dedicated economic development staff, and really recommending, to the other towns are going to do the same thing. We're the only town over here that actually has a dedicated economic development staff person. And I think several of the other towns are going to follow suit because they've seen how successful we've been.
Mm-hmm. Do you worry about another COVID outbreak? Or maybe I should put it this way. Rockland last week reported its first case of monkeypox. Not that the two are related, but we got one pandemic that seems to be wrapping up, and yet we still have to worry about monkeypox. And what is this?
So again, I worry about all of that, to be honest with you, because, until we lived through the pandemic, we never would have thought, okay, this is what was going to take place. I mean, John, I'll never forget during the, right around the time, shortly, probably around the last time I was on your program. I mean, I was dealing with things at that point that I had never thought in a million years as town supervisor I'd be dealing with. I mean, we had to come up with a safety plan for the funeral homes because there was a backlog of burials out in New York City. And so some of the hospitals were working with the funeral homes up here to warehouse bodies. We have 3 funeral homes in the town of Clarkstown. I mean, we're a decent sized town. We're the 10th largest town by population in the state out of 932 towns, just under 90,000 people. And we have 3 funeral homes here, Higgins in New City, Higgins in Congers, and Source in West Nyack. And they're all part of the National Dignity Funeral Home chain. And through that national affiliation, they were literally warehousing bodies in refrigerated trailers in the parking lots. And having to work with my police to, I never would have thought, as town supervisor, I'd be talking about that. But at one point we had 400, between the 3 funeral homes, between 400 and 500 bodies that were in trailers in parking lots just because they couldn't get people buried quickly enough. They had to kind of warehouse them. And it was incredibly sad. And it was just one of those public service and public safety things that we had to kind of look at and deal with. And it was, I could probably tell you 100 different stories of things like that I and the other town supervisors dealt with that we're like, wow, I never would have thought in a million years I'd be dealing with this. Just enforcing, kind of getting into the health department sector. Really, the health department is the one that kind of monitors outside of the local zoning code, a lot of the local businesses, but having to enforce the governor's orders, that became a bit onerous, and the towns had to do that. So yeah, I worry about it. I worry that we can have a resurgence. Although I do think that there's a lot of vaccines out there, and there's a lot of herd immunity. This monkeypox, I'm not necessarily as concerned, but I'm cautiously, looking at it cautiously because God only knows what's going to come next. In fact, one of our former emergency management sergeant, Sergeant McCormick, now lieutenant in the police department, he went for some extensive training with FEMA on smallpox outbreaks and the concern that there could be bioterrorism and smallpox down the road. And again, we've actually done training for it now through our police department, through FEMA, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're prepared so we're not caught short. Just the way in which COVID hit and everything shut down, and then it was kind of flying by the seat of your pants. I think we'll be better prepared whatever hits us next, but the concern is something else could hit us.
George Hoehmann is the Clarkstown Supervisor here on Rockland Talk Radio, the Cup of Joe political show. I'm John Marino. George Hoehmann, Mondaire Jones took office as the congressional representative for the area in early 2021, replacing the retired Nita Lowy at that time. You worked together with Mondaire Jones to solve a flooding situation in West Nyack that existed for 30 years, since the early 90s. Now, Mondaire Jones, with the new redistricting, has decided to run for Congress down in Lower Manhattan and out to Park Slope, Brooklyn. You've got Sean Patrick Maloney from the district above you coming down here, running as the Democrat. Mike Lawler, local assemblyman, running as the Republican for that seat. State Senator Alessandra Biaggi, who's bounced around from running for what she thought was going to be a seat in Westchester and on Long Island before the redistricting, is bouncing around a bit, and seems like she's going to be running here now too, I guess as an independent, basically, or the Working Families Party, or one of those extra parties, I guess, as we kind of call them, the smaller parties. How might this upheaval affect the area?
So that's a great question, John, and I'll tell you, you're absolutely right. So Mondaire Jones was the first congressman from Rockland, in a good number of years. I happen to be a Republican; he's a Democrat, but we worked really well together across party lines. Mondaire was able to secure not only the resecure the money that Nita Lowy originally got for Klein Avenue, but was also able to get us an additional $1.5 million or $1.25 million for the second project in West Nyack, which is the revitalization of our park and our downtown area. And so, I was sorry to see Mondaire go because he worked closely with myself. I think he worked more closely with me than I think the other supervisors here. Don't know why that was. It's just I went to him on a number of issues, and he was very responsive. I've met Sean Patrick Maloney in the past. I haven't since the new district took effect. I haven't met him yet. He hasn't reached out. I have met Alexandra Biaggi. I know Mike Lawler. I think it's going to be a fascinating race. I think that it's the odds are that it's going to be one of the more competitive races in New York. In fact, as I see it, Real Clear Politics has the race as a toss-up. Of course, they've all still got to win primaries, and that's going to be very interesting because the numbers here for the June primaries, which people knew about, were extraordinarily low. And the numbers, I think, in August, when the congressional primary takes place, will probably be even lower. You're in the heart of vacation season. But I think that it's going to be critically important because in all likelihood, by all accounts, when a president takes office, the first midterm election, they lose seats in the House. So it's more than likely that the House is probably going to flip. And whoever gets elected, I'm hopeful that they're going to roll up their sleeves and work closely with us again. There's a lot of infrastructure needs that we all have. And I'd like to see that infrastructure funding coming forward to assist us in a number of the projects that we have. I mean, in Clarkstown, we've had to kind of go it alone. I've got a lot of funding through the state and some federal, but, we've really reprioritized how we've done our bonding and how we've done our capital projects. We're doing triple the amount of roads. So our roads are in pretty good shape right now, the town roads. But we have a lot of infrastructure projects. And with the economy the way that it is, they're even more expensive to do. So we're going to have to really take a look at that going forward. But I do think that this is a once in a generation shift that's taking place with the district now in the next 10 years. We'll see what happens with the census 10 years from now. But what's happened here and the political forces that are at play here are fascinating to see. Sean Patrick Maloney is running the congressional, Democratic, congressional campaign. And because of how he literally kind of stepped over Mondaire Jones, now he's got a primary with Alexandra Biaggi. It's just fascinating to see the dynamics on that part. And then Mike Lawler's in a primary himself with 3 or 4 other people. So, given the low turnout, I think you could flip a coin. It could be anybody. I think odds are it'll be Maloney versus Lawler. And I would not count Mike Lawler out. He's done an awful lot in the assembly. Sean Patrick Maloney's also been a fairly effective congressman. So I think it's going to be a fascinating race to watch. And I think hopefully with that, it's going to force any one of the candidates to really put a high focus. A good chunk of the district is Rockland County. And so they're going to, Rockland is going to get the type of attention that it hasn't gotten, I think, in previous years. Certainly when we had Nita Lowy, I like Nita. She got us some funding in the past, but Nita, she didn't come to Rockland all that much because it was a smaller part of the district. It's a much larger part of the district. In fact, you cannot win the Congressional District 17 without paying a good deal of attention to Rockland. And I think that's going to be good news for all 5 towns.
Mm-hmm. Alessandra Biaggi, as you pointed out, yes, running against Sean Patrick Maloney in the Democratic primary race. Nita Lowy carved the bulk of her career in Westchester. So I think later on in her career, she had to learn Rockland a bit. You bring up a great point about how well you've worked with Mondaire Jones locally and how he really focused on Rockland County and on Clarkstown. Do politicians at the national level, once you get elected to Congress, let's say, kind of sometimes forget about the people locally who got them there and look maybe to raise their national profile a bit too quickly? Now, Mondaire Jones is under some heat this week for seemingly getting ready to go out on the road for congressional candidates around the country. And apparently he said this in an interview before the redistricting took effect, and he had to change course. So that seemed like his plan already, but he seems to still be talking that way, regardless of what happens to him now down in the Manhattan, Brooklyn district. Do politicians sometimes look too far ahead nationally and forget where they came from locally?
Yeah, I think that was a criticism of Mondaire towards the end of his tenure over here, because Mondaire moved, he was from East Ramapo Schools. He lived in Nyack when he got elected, and then he moved to White Plains. And so, I think that was a little bit of a criticism, that he was kind of looking beyond and kind of moving into Westchester. I suppose it can be easy. Look, he was on MSNBC quite a bit, CNN quite a bit, and when you kind of play in that realm, it can be very easy to forget about what happens in your home district. But the problem is that, and as a supervisor, I know this. I'm never away from the people, right? And I think that's what makes you an effective public servant and a good politician. Because literally, you have to remember who put you here. I mean, I'm in this office. It's a great office. Great big room. You can't see it all, but I'm just sharing it. I mean, it's the people's room. And to the extent that I do the people's business is to the extent that I'll be successful being returned to office. And I think the politicians who get caught, and it happens more easily at the state and federal level, it's very easy to look beyond and forget what made you successful, or maybe even what made you want to run in the first place. I didn't have an overarching desire to get involved in politics. I worked in the not-for-profit sector. I knew how to run businesses on the not-for-profit side. And, what drove me to run for town supervisor was I saw that the town wasn't working the way that it needed to be. It needed to be more business friendly. We needed to do more stuff in terms of our services. We needed to do more stuff in terms of the environment. And thankfully I was able to kind of work in all three of those realms. So I haven't forgotten what's gotten me here, but I do think it can be easy, particularly if you're, on speed dial, to get on TV all the time to make yourself successful. Because if you're on TV all the time, particularly the Sunday shows and what have you, you're doing that obviously because they're constantly having to raise money. That was the other issue. My party asked me to consider running for Congress, and I politely said thank you, but I'm not really interested, because I couldn't imagine at that point looking to have to raise $2 or $3 million in $5,000 chunks just to be able to get a message out. I'd much rather do the people's business as town supervisor.
And one thing you're working on right now is expanding town parks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've done a great deal in that area. In fact, I'm very proud of the Bear Swamp Nature Preserve and Trail. A number of years ago, my first term as town supervisor, we had some controversy over a church that wanted to open up on Mountain View Avenue in an environmentally sensitive area across from the Mountain View condominiums. It received some strong public opposition. The church kind of shelved their plans. I eventually bought the property on behalf of the town, and we developed some plans. It's a 5-acre parcel. We put in a parking area and connected a trail through that 5 acres. It connects into the 77-acre Mountain View Nature Park that's owned by the County of Rockland. So this was the first new park in the town in about 20 years. It's a beautiful area that people can hike on. In addition to that, we just opened up 9 pickleball courts in a complex with over in our Congress Park area, Gilchrist Park. It's the first major pickleball complex in the lower Hudson Valley. In addition to that, we put in a year-round concession stand. And I'm very proud of the fact it's being staffed by people with disabilities through Bridges, one of the local human service agencies. I had actually served as the executive director of Rockland Independent Living, which was Bridges' forerunner. Bridges actually runs a cafe in the county office building and the courthouse. And this is now the third cafe that they're going to be operating on behalf of the town It's year round, right over next to the pickleball court complex. And then, of course, we're into a major renovation and expansion of the West Nyack Hamlet Green Park, and I'm very proud of this. It's across from the West Nyack Post Office. It's under construction. If you're driving on Route 59, particularly before the leaves kind of got on the trees, you saw like this big area under construction. And we recreated a wetland area. We expanded it from 1 acre to 4 acres. We have a path and a boardwalk that's going to go around the new drainage pond and through the newly recreated wetland area. Fully accessible playground with a rubberized surface with some adult exercise equipment. A new Hamlet Green Center with a brand new larger gazebo. And then what I really love about it is, because I knew both of these fellas, we have 3 hero firefighters from West Nyack, Tom and Dan Foley. Tom Foley was killed in 9/11. He was a member of Rescue 3. His brother Danny followed in his footsteps, joined Rescue 3 after Tommy's death. Danny, unfortunately, due to his service, died of 9/11 related illness. They were members of the West Nyack Fire Department, volunteer fire department, as well as New York City firefighters. And then also Chief Ken Maturo, who was the chief of the West Nyack Fire Department and died as a result of a fire in 1974. So we're going to have 3 beautiful monuments, life-size statue of Tom and Dan Foley in the middle of the park, and a monument commemorating 9/11, and a monument commemorating Chief Ken Maturo, who died in July of 1974 as a result of his service to the people here. And we're renaming the park from the West Nyack Hamlet Green to West Nyack Hamlet Green and Firefighter Memorial Park. We'll also have a small 9/11 monument that's being replaced, put back there, and also another monument off on the side that just dedicated to our volunteer firefighters with recognizing their service. So that park will be open in October to November. And then we're also working on several new pickleball courts in other parts of the town, as well as some other enhancements to some of our fields. So it's a major renovation and expansion of our parks and the services. There's 400 people that have joined a pickleball league for these pickleball courts in Clarkstown. It's a crazy amount of people. It's the fastest growing sport. I knew nothing about it 3 years ago. It's been around since the 60s, but really got new life and invigoration in 2008, and it's just been going great guns. And literally there are, as I said, 400 people that are in just part of this one league. So not only did we need those 9 courts and complex, but we're going to be adding 4 in Zucker Park in New City by the end of the year, and probably sometime next year we'll be adding another couple over in Jamons. And then the last thing we're adding through funding we were able to receive from the state, we're doing a really nice amphitheater right next to the Jamons Pool complex. It'll be kind of an outdoor setting, kind of set into the hillside with passive seating on the hills. We're creating some terraces on the hill with an enclosure down below. It'll be able to hold 1,500 people for a concert. Right now, we've got a great summer concert series every Wednesday of the summer, all the way through Labor Day. And we hold that over at Lake Nanuet Ball Field. That was something else we changed during COVID. We moved it from Jamons to a much larger field. We got more people coming to it. So every Wednesday, 7:30 to 9 at night over at Lake Nanuet. But eventually next year, we'll be doing the amphitheater, and the concerts will move back over to Jamons, but into a really nice large venue. It'll be very much like some of the outdoor venues you see upstate with a stage with a roof on it, but with literally a level area and then terrace going up the hill where people can bring their folding chairs or blankets and sit on the grass and enjoy a summer concert, and kind of in a wooded area that kind of surrounds it. So yeah, there's a lot. We're pretty ambitious with what we're doing with the Parks and Recreation Services.
Now, pickleball is the big in thing in the Hamptons this summer. Places in Hampton Bays, Watermill have developed. It's coming to Rockland County now, as you say. Is that the surprise mystery topic you wanted to tell us about?
Well, actually, the mystery topic was really that we've been nominated for an Emmy. Who would have thought? So that was the mystery topic that I kind of broke the suspense on that about halfway through the show. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I never, again, the things that you try and reach the people however you can, and through our public access program, that's great ways to do it on the public access channel and through YouTube and Facebook. And Joe Beckerly, our production, company that we hire, we pay him a few thousand a year, and he records and helps edit these programs. And he was like, no, you'd be surprised. There were 2,200 submissions. There were 180 in about 75 categories that received actual nominations from the submissions. And this is like the New York media market, which, I'm kind of, seeing how competitive they are.
Right.
And we were nominated. We're one of two in the religion category. We're up against a television station from upstate New York that covered a McDonald's sponsored gospel fest, and they did a program about it. But it's surprising. I never would have thought as town supervisor I'd ever be in consideration for an Emmy, but I guess we are. But it just reminds us of what we need to do to continue to really look to try and use whatever tools are necessary to reach the people. And I will tell you that Faith Matters program, we've taken on some really difficult topics. The topic that happened to be nominated for the Emmy was really, we did it last March of 2021, and it was really looking at the disturbing rise of anti-religious bigotry, anti-Semitism within the United States, anti-Christian and anti-Muslim sentiment. And just we cited some surveys from the Pew Research Center, and it was just a roundtable discussion between a local rabbi, a local minister, and a trustee from the local mosque. It was great to see how they connected with one another and how they found commonality, and how we didn't really see as much of the bigotry here, but unfortunately they did say it does exist. But it seems to be something that's been on the rise, and if we're going to confront things, we need to call them out first. And so that was an effort as part of the program. Some of the other topics we talked about, were really just how houses of worship were faring through the pandemic was one of the programs. And it was interesting to see how they changed their services and how people are participating, from that. So again, what it's taught me is we have to use whatever means necessary to be able to get the word out, to be able to assist our residents. And I can tell you that our residents enjoy those programs. I hear it, the Meet Me on Main programs in particular, the Hometown Happenings, they become like a library. Like Hometown Happening, it's like an interview program I do. I've been doing it since my first year as supervisor. So we're now over 70 shows, and literally there are people that I've interviewed, unfortunately, that have passed away. So it really becomes a beautiful thing, almost like a tribute. Like one of the finest interviews we ever did with that was with Jerry Donnell, who unfortunately was passed away a couple of years ago. And he had been the director of veteran services and hugely impactful in Rockland for very many years. And what a gift it is to be able to go back and have that show play periodically where people can hear about Jerry and some of the things Jerry was involved with. So that was the surprise announcement. Just we're Emmy nominated, and we'll let you know in October if we actually receive it. We're, as I said, one of two in that category. Some categories have more. So right now we have a 50% chance of getting the Emmy, but just being nominated as literally a town supervisor with on a shoestring budget, going up against the entire New York media market. We're very proud of that and that accomplishment.
And congratulations again. Best of luck with that too.
Thanks so much.
By the way, for anyone who would like to contact your office, what should they do?
Oh, sure. So certainly, you can very easily go to the Town of Clarkstown website, www.clarkstown.org. You can contact me via, and I do this all the time, you can contact me via, the office through email, g.hoehmann, g.hoehmann @clarkstown.org. You can also call the office. It's 845-639-2050. The other thing we tell people to do is check us out on Facebook. The Town of Clarkstown Facebook page. I also have a very robust Facebook page at George Hoehmann, public figure. In addition to that, check us out on all the social media platforms. And please check out the Town of Clarkstown YouTube channel. We have an enormous amount of video resources up there, interviews, all of those Faith Matters programs, all of those Meet Me on Main programs, all of those Hometown Happening programs. In addition, a lot of educational things we put together. We did recreational programming for seniors, exercise classes for seniors, for young people that we broadcast during the pandemic. There's a whole library of things up there, from personal trainers that we brought in that we filmed, to even some of the business seminars that we've done, as well as a number of events, dedications, some of the dedications of the parks. There's an enormous amount of stuff up in the Town of Clarkstown YouTube channel. You should check it out.
George Hoehmann is the Clarkstown Supervisor. George Hoehmann, we thank you for returning with us on Rockland Talk Radio. Let's talk again soon.
Thanks, John. Very much appreciate it. Have a great summer.
You too. George Hoehmann here on Rockland Talk Radio, the Cup of Joe political show. I'm John Marino. We are produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by people like Roberson Oil, the house that service built, by Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk in Westchester, and Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard. They work up and down the Hudson Valley, as does Michael Labriola and Roberson Oil, along with Jaguar Land Rover, located throughout the Hudson Valley, including in places like Mount Kisco, New Rochelle, and White Plains. Catch all of our Rockland, Westchester, Putnam, Orange, Dutchess, and Fairfield County talk radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube. Download our app. We're available now on Apple Podcasts, too, and take that app with you 24/7 everywhere you go. All right, do that, and we'll see you next time around right here on Rockland Talk Radio.